Now let's continue our layers discussion. On your layers panel, you have a lot of very helpful options. You'll notice that there might be some familiar things like a lock icon. You might see that. You might also see a familiar word like opacity. Okay, and also effects and a few of these other things that we're going to be getting into later on. Absolutely. But let's just talk about some of the things that are going to help us currently in this initial stage. Let's say I keep clicking on this image and like, oops, I don't want to do that anymore. It keeps getting in the way. I can very easily lock this. So therefore, I don't accidentally click on that. It's really good if you have a very busy canvas, if you have a lot of text in there, or anything else like that. You don't want to accidentally click on something. So let me go ahead and click on the lock icon, and you'll notice a few things happen. This lock now gets indented. I can see that's highlighted. Notice there's also a lock icon on the Iceberg 2 layer. So when I try to click on that, I can't do it. As long as I try and try and try, I still can't do it. This one, still available. That's great. It's not locked. So how do I unlock it? Just simply click on the Iceberg 2 layer again, click on lock. Great. And now it's activated again. You'll also notice that the bounding box goes away just the same. So notice I can also click on the lock icon itself right there on the layer if you like. All right, another nice little element is opacity. So what does opacity mean? You might want to have a nice little sort of see-through option. Essentially, opacity is like transparency. Okay, so right now it is 100% opaque. So if I click on this little drop down, you will see that I can click here and just drag that down. You can see I'll make that 50% opaque, and you can see it becomes sort of ghostly, kind of a nice little effect there. Great, I'm going to bring that back down. Now, one little cool little pro tip with Photoshop, if you notice I want to move my mouse right on top of the word opacity, right? You can see that there. You're going to see a little hand with two little arrows there. If I click and drag on the word opacity, it also allows me to bring it down in real time. We're going to see that in a few different examples all throughout this class, but you might want to practice that a few times to really get that down. It's a little bit unusual, but incredibly valuable. So I'm going to bring this to exactly 50 and not have to like see what it's going to do after the fact. I can do that in real time, okay? Which is pretty nice. I really like that, okay? And I can bring that back up, okay, great. And then I click away or I hit enter and I am good to go, okay? Other times you might want to do some other types of layer organization. You may want to start to group your items as well. So I have all of these items here, and I'd like to group them together so they're all images. So I separate them all out from, let's say, my text that might come in or my background colors. So what I'd like to do is simply click on the first item that's here, and then hold down the Shift key and click on the last one. And down on the bottom, you will see I have this little folder icon. I click on that, create new group, and that is simply grouped. I double click on group one. I'm just going to say images, hit enter, and now I've got a group. Fantastic. So we've learned how to rename, we've learned how to group, we learned how to reorder, we learned how to lock, we learned how to do opacity. We should feel very comfortable moving forward to manage our layers with our upcoming lessons. Okay, and welcome back. In this next series of lessons, we are going to create this terrifying scene here. You will see that we have a very creative use of layers and effects, a little bit of text, and a little bit of opacity. Just want to show you here what we're going to be creating, and we're going to be able to start this from scratch. So in this lesson, we're going to learn about different types of selection, working with the quick selection tool. We're also going to learn about the magic wand tool. We're going to learn a little bit about the lasso tools. So it's going to be very important we understand layer management at this point, also naming our layers, and then we're going to be able to create these little glows and little strokes and everything. This is going to be a very important series of lessons, all kind of sandwiched into a series of many lessons. Okay, so how do we create this from scratch? So let's go ahead and watch me as I go ahead and open up to my first file. I'm going to open up to Ascoli. This is basically the background of everything. And just notice what the finished product looks like and how it looks now. So how do we work with these? All right, the first thing I want to do before I do anything else is I'd like to unlock my background. You'll notice that my background is currently locked. Okay, so I want to be able to play around with that. So I'm going to unlock that. So very simply, just go ahead and click on that lock as we learned earlier. Now, let's discuss some of these selection tools. Okay, in order to affect it, you have to select it. That's a very, very important adage to take away from really any program, but definitely within Photoshop. So I want to be able to affect this. I want to be able to make my sky separate from my dinosaurs, separate from my flying saucers, separate from my piazza. If we look at my original document, you will notice that this is currently separated out. Like, whoa, how did we do that? What is the trick? What can we do to make that separated out? And there's a number of different ways we can do that. And most that you're going to start off with is going to be around selection, 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 selection. So if you look over here, I have these 1, 2, 3, 4 icons. And remember how I changed my side panel there to be in 2 columns. So mine's going to look like this. Now, a lot of these panels you're going to see have little triangles living inside of them. Do you see that? It has a little triangle, little triangle, little triangle. That's going to be very important for us to understand as we move forward with all of our tools, to understand that there's something potentially living underneath, living inside them. Okay, you can see, wow, fantastic. A lot of cool stuff. Here's my quick selection tool. Here's my magic wand. I right click on this. You can see, okay, great. There's my different lasso tools. Oh, that's wonderful. What about this guy here, my marquee? I right click, great, wonderful. Now, most of these, if not all of them, have some type of shortcut key associated with them. Like for example, if I move over my move tool, notice there is a V, right? They used to have it as shaped like a V. That's why they had it like a V, like the letter V. Good ones to know about. Here is my magic wand tool, right, for a W. Here is L for lasso. Okay, so lots of good things to remember. M for marquee. Okay, so definitely some good little takeaways here. So let's talk about the difference between our quick selection tool and our magic wand tool. The quick selection tool is going to select kind of a whole swath of different series of colors and objects all throughout based off of their different contrasting levels here, as opposed to my magic wand, which is going to be more about color. It's looking for different colors and it selects like colors. So if I had kind of like a only blue here and not my clouds, then the magic wand tool would be better. But because I have a whole series of like little things here, like my clouds kind of breaking things up, I want to choose my quick selection tool. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you'll notice that my mouse now turns into this little circle with a plus sign. Plus meaning it's going to add on to the selection. You'll notice that on my options bar up on top, I also have the plus sign. So if I'm taking away, I can also just click on this to subtract from the selection. But I'm going to add to the selection. Okay, you'll also see that my brush is a certain size right now. It is currently at 40. If I click on this and I can go ahead and make that nice and big, I can do that too. Let's bring that back down to 40. But I'd like to show you a nice little pro tip that I prefer, and that's using the right and left bracket keys. The bracket keys in your keyboard, which are right next to the letter P, and that allows me in real time to then make this get bigger or smaller. And that way you have a little more control over it. If it's too big, it's going to be too powerful. It's going to go too fast, too far. So I'm going to make it maybe about 50 or so. All right, so that's kind of nice. So the key with our quick selection tool is to go slow and to trust the program that it knows what you want to do. So you can just watch me now and you'll have time to practice as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and click very slowly and you'll watch at some point it'll just jump and just make a big jump at some point. Look at that. Wow, because of all that blue right there, okay, it just did a quick selection, didn't it? Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you'll see that it also didn't get this stuff here, right? Or it overgot that because the blue of the dome also got confused with the blue of the sky, all right? So not a big deal. So I'm going to zoom in. You can zoom in a few different ways, okay? So I'm going to zoom in by holding down the Alt key in my keyboard and then just scrolling in with my mouse. You can also use the zoom tool, which is right here, or you can just do Control or Command plus plus to zoom in. All right, now that I'm zoomed in, I'll be able to say, okay, did a good job, but not a great job. So I'm gonna make my brush a little smaller, so it's not super powerful at this point. And I'm just gonna say, I want less of a selection. So look what it keeps doing. Like, oops, I don't want it to just keep adding to the selection. Like, oops, it keeps going in the opposite direction because I'm still adding to the sky. So I have two options here. I can click on this little minus sign, or in my opinion, this is even better, hold down the Alt key. See that? If I hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, notice how it becomes a minus. So I'm just going to go ahead and just give this a little nudge back up. And I'm not going to get this perfect just for the purposes of this exercise. I'm just going to go and just give this a little bit more, just go up to a little bit more right there. Okay, great. Maybe this right there. And Photoshop does a pretty good job once I do this selection. Just go a little bit more there. Okay, great. And now I want to zoom out, right? So I can see the whole thing. So I can do exactly the counterpart of what I showed you before, which was the Alt or Option and then the zooming. Or I can do Control or Command minus minus. But another nice little shortcut is just if you do Control 0. Think about that as like ground zero. It takes you back to a best fit of things. That's great. All right, now I want this sky to be on its own layer. So therefore I can create a situation like that. How do I do that? Remember we talked earlier about how right click goes a long way in this program? If I right click on that sky, I get a lot of options here. Deselect, a very important one, absolutely. I can select inverse, like, oh, that's interesting. I can select the opposite, so it would select the piazza instead of the sky. Cool, a lot of cool things here. But what we're gonna focus on here is this really neat feature called Layer via Cut. So in other words, it's saying we're going to create a new layer and also cut it at the same time. Really fantastic. So I do that, and you barely notice anything here. It looks almost exactly the same, if not the same. But now I have a new layer that was now separated out. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that and call that sky. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video for a second, and I'm going to have you go ahead and do what we just did.